welcome. My name is Brittany Quimby and I am the Marketing Director here at HITMC. And today I am joined with Joy Rios, the founder of the podcast Hit Like a Girl. Welcome, Joy. Thanks for being here with us.
I appreciate you having me. Thanks. This is great.
So recently, Joy won the HITMC Award in 2021 for Best Health IT Podcast of the Year for her podcast, Hit Like a Girl. And we wanted to have Joy on here so we can talk a little bit about the podcast, her win, and what she's been up to this past year. So I'm going to dive right in, Joy. For those of you, or for those who are listening and don't know, can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. My name is Joy Rios. I have been working in health IT for about a decade. I have been a subject matter expert in the merit-based incentive payment system, or what began as meaningful use and the EHR incentive program. So I've spent a lot of time helping clinicians navigate value-based care, and have even been like a 5-time author on the subject as those rules change over the years. And I kind of describe for people who don't really get the MIPS program, I think of it in layman's terms as being like a health data accountant who helps clinicians get their data over to the government on an annual basis, which essentially affects their Medicare reimbursement. And so that's what I do in my professional world. And we have Chirpy Bird Health IT Consulting that does that. I've been doing that the same amount of time that I've been doing the Hit Like a Girl podcast. And most recently, I mean, on just a personal level, I moved to Baja, Mexico on leap day of the last leap year. So February 29th, 2020, which I think kind of will influence a lot of what we talk about today, because it was definitely a unique time and different way to spend the pandemic.
Definitely. And I mean, that sounds amazing. What a time to be able to do that, right? Wow.
Yeah,
and just
had no idea.
And just for the HITMC community, we always like to do a fun fact about each of our guests. And I know, you know, a fun fact is that you did move up to Baja, but is there another fun fact that you want to share with the community that people may not know about you?
Yeah, sure. I was an art minor in college. And so I ended up, it was kind of something I set aside for many years as I was building my career. But then during the pandemic and kind of unpacking and having all this time to myself, I ended up finding a bunch of my old artwork and starting to get inspired to actually paint again and do pottery. And I made postcards out of one of the pieces that I did back when I was in, I don't know, it was like 20 years ago. So
amazing.
That's random fact. I like doing creative things.
Lovely. And are those your pieces behind you as well? Some of
those
your
are
pieces?
not. No, those are my landlord's pieces. They came with the place.
Well, they look great too. The postcard is amazing. So neat, and such a cool thing to be able to kind of invigorate that part of yourself, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just been I feel very fortunate that I have, you know, all the art supplies and some time to just kind of get crafty and spend my time that way. It's definitely a break from, and very different from doing health IT consulting.
Yes, definitely very different. Okay, and so speaking of the podcast, I'm sure the community has probably listened to many episodes of the podcast, but there are some new people who might not necessarily know about it. So can you just tell us a little bit about Hit Like a Girl?
Sure. So it's health IT focused, and of course, like the Like a Girl part is really an effort to celebrate, amplify, and learn from the many women experts that work in healthcare and health IT. And so we essentially invite one woman expert to be our guest for each episode to talk about her piece of the health IT puzzle. And so there's so many ways that people can work, you know, and get involved and contribute to this industry that we kind of think of it in terms of like, all right, how can we learn what all the pieces are and help us put them together so that we can do more good and have a bigger, more positive impact on outcomes in the future.
I love that. And, you know, I think for a long time, people, I think this may be just kind of my opinion, but thought of healthcare as a very kind of male dominated industry. But, you know, that's not the case. There are a lot of women within the industry and even more now these days. So, you know, given that, how did you come up with the idea? Or what was the, you know, the birth of this idea for the podcast?
Well, I had been doing quite a bit of consulting. I've been traveling around the country talking to different medical practitioners. From my experience, I noticed that a lot of organizations are essentially engined, like women are the engine of many organizations. They do a lot of the groundwork and keep things going. And then in contrast to that, when you go to healthcare conferences, they don't necessarily get the credit for it. They aren't on stage. There's typically not very many, like the balance is certainly not equal of like who's doing the work versus who's talking about the work. And so there was a conference that I went to in 2018 that got a little bit of a bad rap for their all male panels, the manels. And I just remember feeling like kind of outraged at the time and just feeling like, okay, well, if somebody else isn't going to do it, how can I? And just feeling like inspired to create a space that, like, if they can't have the stage on the, you know, on this big stage, well, let's just start small. I'll create my own stage, and it'll, you know, as small as it is, at least it's something. It's a starting point. So I thought about it as like, okay, well, if I'm not seeing the example that I want to see out in the world, how can I be that example? And hopefully, maybe if I'm lucky, it will catch on.
Well, and it definitely did. And thank you for doing that, because I think it's an inspiration to all of us as well, to be able to highlight those stories and those insights and, you know, just the experience that, you know, many of these women have, and, you know, being able to kind of, like you said, showcase or even just to look behind the curtain at these women.
Well, thanks. Yeah, I mean, I've learned a lot. It has really been a great experience just to be able to talk to so many women and learn about their contributions and just hear about, okay, what's their vision and how are they, what has their career path been like? What are obstacles that they have faced? How have they overcome them? How are they helping other people like hopscotch those challenges? And it's just been, I think, helpful for me personally, and I think also our listeners, of just one, knowing that they're not alone, and knowing that they're not like, a lot of women are like the only in their organization or the only at the table. So just kind of shining a light that there's more of us out here and we're here to be supportive of one another, I feel like is just like a good place to swim in. It's a nice pool to swim in, so to speak. Sure. Yeah.
And I think that camaraderie is like you said, is huge, to be able to know, you know, people may have been in your spot and here's how they got here, and to be able to connect on those, you know, intimate levels as women is such a, you know, such a beautiful thing to be able to be a part of.
Yeah, I agree. Yeah, and it's really, I mean, honestly, we've been able to speak to people at all levels of their career, so it's not necessarily just women in the C-suite, but people who, and on this journey that we were just on, it was really great to just actually meet a lot of them in person and make real connections too, but I'm sure we'll get into that.
Right. Well, and it's a good segue. So, you know, you mentioned you had kind of moved to Baja at the start of the pandemic, and this past year has been quite different for everyone around the world. So maybe you can give us a little insight of like what you've been up to this past year.
Yeah, I mean, well, so it was a little bit of settling in and really kind of adjusting to life of living in a different country. I mean, it's not that far from the border. I live, you know, 10 minutes away from the US border. However, the timing of it was that it was shut down for essential travel only. And I didn't know anybody yet. I didn't know my neighbors. I didn't know anybody. So thankfully, I had done a lot of our last season was Zoom calls from, remote meetings. So essentially everyone like did telehealth. Well, we did like telepodcasting.
Yeah.
And so, so that worked out. It was a good way for me to get an idea of what people were doing as the pandemic was becoming more real and how it was affecting folks. And when I was talking to people in different types of organizations, seeing how they were adjusting and pivoting and kind of just getting a better idea of how the whole thing was working, not just from the news or not just from my social media intake, but like really kind of talking to people and getting their perspective on like how serious it was and whatnot. So I spent a lot of time alone. I spent a lot of time on Zoom calls. And then I think around July of last year, of 2020, I got inspired because I figured it's literally just me and my dog. If my goal is to stay away from people, like social distance, I think I can find a way to do that in a safe way. And so I ended up going on a road trip. I just like packed my car and ended up being gone for 6 weeks. I took my computer, worked remotely, and visited 8 different states. I went to national parks and just like did a bunch of stuff outside. And I ended up reconnecting in person with a lot of my network. It was a lot of women in my network in these different places. And when I got back from that, it was so like empowering and inspiring and rejuvenating. Like it just really put this whole like new lease on life for me, that I felt like this is bigger than just me and my experience. How can I share this? How can I, give this away in a sense to our community?
Right. That is so cool. I think, to be able to, to just kind of pack up and go across 8 states, like you said, and to really be with yourself, but then have inspiration for this wonderful idea that you can then bring forward into this year is amazing. So I assume that spawned the hit the trails idea. So
Yeah.
maybe you can tell us a little bit about how that venture went. I think it's over the past couple months that you've been doing that.
Yeah. So it inspired, basically, I came back last August and was thinking, how can I make this bigger and better? And I guess I also just want to acknowledge and recognize that a lot of women are in a completely different situation than I am. They've got kids at home. At that time that I was doing that, a lot of people were preparing for back to school, and that was where their head was at. So that's why I felt like, you know what, I think I'm in a unique position that I can be the one that helps facilitate this and coordinate it so that it's less work on them. All they got to do is show up, right? And so basically that's what I got set out to organizing. I thought that how cool would it be if I could collaborate with the HIMSS organization. When this whole thing when the pandemic started, we were all supposed to go to HIMSS, and that's what got canceled.
Yeah.
And so I thought, I would like to believe that with, people are going to get vaccinated and that we're going to be on the other side of this, and kind of made the bet in January that like, there's going to be an end to this at some point. And so I was able to collaborate with HIMSS officially, and then they ended up helping connect me with all of their regional chapters, so that I basically shared, like, here's my big idea. This is where I want to go. These are the hikes that I want to go on. It's very much bucket list worthy of, of bringing people to beautiful places and kind of having what I like to call calm adventures. Like, it's adventurous, but not the kind that like stresses you out. You just gotta like
right.
go and have fun.
Yeah.
And that's really kind of it started with like a bucket list of hikes, and then mapping that out, and then working with HIMSS, and then marketing and trying to get people to sign up. And at the end of it, it ended up, so basically we started traveling in May. We were on the road for 65 days in total. We met up with more than 60 women and visited 25 states. So I rented a trailer. I basically had to learn how to do that. I had never hauled a trailer before. So that was definitely expanding my own comfort zone. And yeah, put 10,000 miles on my car and brought my dog along, and just kind of like created amazing experiences all over the country. And it was pretty amazing. Like now in hindsight, I'm just like, I can't believe we did that. That was really
When
awesome.
can we do it again?
Well, no, it doesn't feel like it's the kind of thing that you like. I don't think we can do this on an annual basis. I don't know that this set of circumstances is ever going to present itself in such a way that it would make sense to do it.
Right.
But it did feel, I'm like, you know what, especially with lockdown and there's less in-person events, less indoor events, like what is it that we can do that it offers us the opportunity to connect in a safe way? And it felt like, you know, not only like how cool to be able to reconnect with yourself, reconnect with your colleagues, but also reconnect with nature and just kind of get outdoors to kind of think about big picture, like how does this all fit together? So
Totally. And I think you said it right, you know, and it's all the things came together for
no,
this
no
kind of
big deal.
moment. You know, but you know, I think a lot of people were trying to kind of reconnect with themselves after the pandemic, you know, trying to reconnect with themselves, you know, thinking about a better kind of mental health. I know myself, I would, you know, go out on walks during lunch because you're inside and you're on Zoom, you know, all day. You need to be able to, you know, for me, I love reconnecting, like you said, reconnecting with nature. So I think all those pieces, I think, formed such a beautiful experience that you guys got to put on.
Yeah, it was really, I mean, I can't tell you how amazing it was to just like walk and talk and with women and awesome men in just different parts of the country. And it was just really, really beautiful. And some of the more memorable, I mean, I feel like I can list them all, but it was just like it was an honor in a lot of ways to get to be a lot of people's like first, a lot of people were newly vaccinated and hadn't been outside of their bubble. And so this was an event that they were, you know, opening up their own, you know, their bubble to join
Right.
us and like making a lot of, and I mean, in certain ones, it's not like we were able to go to every place and make it super convenient. There's some people that drove 2 or 3 hours just to go on a hike with us. And like in that sense, I'm like, I can't believe people made such a big effort to be part of it. It was really, really special.
Oh gosh, that's so amazing. And you know, you said 20 states that you visited, and you know, I just kind of have to ask this question: is there one moment or you know one part that sticks out in your mind as being kind of the best part of the venture?
So I don't know that there's such thing as like one best part, but when I think about personally, like we saw a lot of waterfalls. I saw a lot of like, and they like I got to go visit the Upper Peninsula of Michigan, which I have never had an opportunity to do. That was amazing. Got to see Mount Rushmore. We went to Seneca Falls, New York, which is like super historic. And I spent a lot of time in New England. I'd never really had an opportunity to spend time really in New England. Being in New York City was amazing. I mean, it was like, so on a personal level, it was really nice to explore parts of the country that I had never had the chance to see before. That's for me. On the hikes, it was like the memorable hikes were Joshua Tree National Park in California, Phoenix. We had a Scottsdale group that was really great. Nashville was incredible. Like we spent 5 days in Nashville, and that was amazing. Virginia, gorgeous. Like Rhode Island, New Hampshire, New York City, like all of like it was all really great. I mean,
oh, that's so amazing.
I mean, experienced a ton of challenges too. It's not like it's like all fun all the time, like figuring out food and figuring out like unhitching and rehitching that dang trailer as many times as we did. Like that was a challenge. There were plenty of times that I wish I could like snap my fingers and have like a big strong man show up. Like, I really
can you help me do this? Thank
yeah,
you.
seriously. But that didn't happen. So it was like, shoot, I gotta figure this out. And so, you know, and the weather didn't necessarily cooperate with us. It rained a lot. We did end up cutting it short. This whole trip was supposed to be 90 days that ended in at HIMSS. And as you can see, I'm home now. Right. And that is mostly because of weather. Like it got really hot on the West Coast And so
Yeah.
combined with the rain and combined with the heat, it just felt like, I think we've done what we needed to do. This has been a big deal, and now there's like, we can call it. So
Right. Yeah,
yeah,
and sometimes the weather is bigger than most things, right? And with the heat that's
yeah,
happening, at West, it's a bit intense, right? For for
yeah,
a lot of
yeah,
people.
and especially like if it's Southern Utah. I love that part of the country. Southern Utah is just gorgeous, and I really wanted to spend time like in Moab or in Zion or
Right.
Bryce National Park or whatever. It would have been gorgeous, but honestly, just way too hot to make it reasonable for anybody to do that.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Oh, well, it sounds so amazing, and I know people can or have been following your venture and can still probably follow most of it online. So people should definitely check that out. Um, but switching gears for a minute, let's talk a little bit about your recent award win. So you recently won the award for Best Health IT Podcast of the Year. I'd like to ask people this, but can you tell us a little bit about, how you felt when you knew that you won the award, or where you were, what was that moment like?
It was so serendipitous. It was such a perfect moment because we happened to be in Dallas, Texas. We were on the trip for the day of the awards. And we happened to be that day staying with my cousin and his family. And my sister had flown out to join us. And so it was a little miniature family reunion that I was not intending to overlap with this award ceremony. I don't even think I knew that I was nominated, to be honest. And so I got to, hear the news and hear like the speech with my family there with me. And it was so lovely. I mean, I was overwhelmed. And especially hearing some of the nice things that were said about me is just sort of like, I can't tell you how many, like, I keep joking that I'm channeling John of like crying happy tears.
Right. Oh, we love John's happy tears, right? It's
Yeah.
always a good moment when that happens.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean, because everything has just been so special. And to be on literally in the middle of this journey, be surrounded by my family and people that I truly love, and then to have this honor at the same time, it's just, I mean, you can't plan stuff like that. It's just really special. And there's definitely been a lot of times over the last 2 months that I've just sort of been overwhelmed with like how beautiful our community is, how beautiful the world is, how kind people are, how like fortunate I feel just to like be part of a lot of this stuff. And that's despite looking at the news and despite knowing that
Right.
things are crazy in the world.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. And that can be, and that's what you said something earlier, being able to kind of tell the stories. You mentioned like during the pandemic, tell the stories that are actually happening versus what the media is saying. It
Yeah.
can be so overwhelming, what the media kind of puts in front of us. So to be able to kind of, tell those stories that are real and true and authentic about what's happening versus all the the craziness that is happening. I think that's such a wonderful thing to be able to do.
Yeah, it was really nice to be able to tap in and to experience the kindness of people. I know that the country is very divided in a lot of different ways, but regardless of where we were, every single state from north, south, east, west, like people were kind. People and yeah, and people went out of their way. Like I keep saying, like there were definitely moments that I needed help, and there was never a moment that it wasn't provided. Like somebody somehow showed up, and that's I again feel super fortunate to have experienced that. But it's nice to be able to turn around and say, like, you know what, I think we need to believe in the goodness of people. I don't think that that's what's actually shared a lot of the time, and so we can get so anyway, so it's nice to be able to like just spread that message, like people are good, we need to continue believing that.
Yeah,
So
and yeah, that's right. Like innately, people are good, and I think sometimes we lose sight of that, right? So to be able to kind of, pull the blanket off and really kind of show that is such a great thing. So switching gears a little bit, we'll kind of get a little bit personal into your podcast. A lot of the time there's art, or the art that you are creating does something unexpected for listeners or the people who consume it. I'm just wondering, is there one thing that your program did or has done for your listeners or your audience that you just never expected?
Well, so first of all, the fact that we even have listeners is something that I never really expected. Half of the time I feel like I'm like, oh, I'm just sort of talking into the void and don't know that anybody's actually listening on the other side. So that in and of itself, like meeting so many people that either like, confirmed that they were listeners or actually like repeated certain things back to me. Like, hey, I was listening to that conversation with so-and-so, and like repeating part of the conversation has been a total trip.
Right.
But when I think about like the effect that it's had, like some of the conversation that has been sparked from it, I think is really what I like, the vision of what I'm after, which is changing the culture where women are just like unabashedly supporting each other. That it comes from a place of like, you know what, your success is all of our success. And so, especially considering like how much women have lost when it comes to in terms of like getting to the C-suite or the glass ceiling, or even so many different stats. I don't want to memorize them or even, but like ultimately coming from a place of, hey, you're like, I believe in you. I believe your success is going to help create a better future for those following in our footsteps. And just kind of hearing like that thread get pulled a little bit more to be woven into more conversation. And, hopefully into just like action of like, yes, how can I be a mentor or mentor others, or just like be a solid human being for the other people that are new and up and coming into this career. That's the part I think that it's different than just like, hey, we're just having a conversation, because it's not. It's ultimately what I'd like to see is some culture change.
Definitely. And I saw something recently, because I think there's been such a history with women where it's an unhealthy competition, in years past. And I saw something recently where it's, let's normalize, they have all these things, let's normalize, but let's normalize lifting each other up as women. And it's so true, because we have to fight against so many other things, and there's so many other pressures within your career and your life. But why not normalize lifting each other up and having each other's back? So I love your comment that you just mentioned.
Well, and also like not expecting us all to be the same. I mean, I do have to be honest, like, so my travel partner and co-host for this season was Sharice Maynard. She was on this trip with me. We're night and day. We're so different. We're so different. But I love her, and I know she loves me too. And I, of course, like advocate for her success, and I know she advocates for mine. And it's just so nice to be able to respect each other and respect our differences, and also just like want the best for each other. And I think that expands obviously much bigger than our small circle.
Yeah, definitely. So you've had a ton of women on your podcast, and this is kind of a forward-looking question. But if there is one person that you could have on your podcast in the future, what would be that one guest that you would love to have, and why?
I cannot tell you that I have not stalked Karen DeSalvo at a couple of different HIMSS conferences, and just sort of like, I've been able to like grab a few selfies with her, and I've certainly asked the question, and then like I've gotten into her DMs, but I haven't been able to lock it down. And so she has definitely been at the top of my wish list for a while. Like I would love to have a long conversation with her.
For sure. I think I was at at HIMSS, and she was doing a chat for, I think, I can't even remember what it was for, but I remember being in a group photo, myself and another colleague did a group photo with her. And I think that's probably the closest I've ever come to something like that. But it was such a cool moment to just be a part. And there was so many other health IT women there. So it was just such a cool, thing to be a part of. So yeah, that would definitely be a number one guest for sure.
Yeah. I mean, I can think of plenty of others, but to be honest, the list is long. Like we have more than 70 women who've been nominated to be guests. And I'm like, we only do one a week. There's
not enough time.
Not enough time.
Oh my goodness. And so you mentioned earlier, I know you have written 5 books, which is amazing. And I think that's how I actually came to know of you, because I think at my last job, we did a webinar with you. Colin had asked you to come on, and you did a webinar about myths. So, you've done a lot, and, it's clear from this, this last year, there's no stopping you. But, in terms of healthcare, what are some of the things that get you excited about the healthcare industry? Or what are some of the up and coming things that you've heard either, from the women on your podcast or just in general that gets you excited about healthcare?
Well, so now I've got a couple big ideas that I want to be able to find ways that our community can tackle big questions, and they don't necessarily fit into the context of MIPS or value-based care, although they're definitely related. They're having to do with like health equity and access to health, but also like maternal mortality rates and burnout, and how to and kind of like what I'm talking about changing the culture for women. Like how do we affect the data that is not, so that it's not biased around maternal mortality? Like how do we do a better job for Black and brown mothers around the country? And like there's definitely, my wheels are turning on like how can we connect and work with each other to make a bigger impact in the areas that matter, that are not necessarily defined. So yeah, I don't really wake up and think about Medicare or reimbursement.
Well, that's good. I mean, and that's good, because I think that's a huge part of, I think, the healthcare industry, and you kind of have honed that well. But I think, like you said, there's other portions that not are being forgotten, but aren't I think adequately being promoted, or like you said, lifted up to be, to expose the areas where there can be, quite a bit of improvement.
Yeah, I mean, I feel really pulled right now to be considering, like, really, I think about what we've just done. I think about it as like laying the groundwork and doing some reconnaissance and research and figuring out, okay, who knows what are we all good at, as we've identified the puzzle pieces, right? Then how do we take them all and work them together, and what's the picture that we want to build with them? And that's where my head is at the moment. And I'm like, okay, well, there's a lot to do, but I still need to rest. I'm still like,
still need a nap.
Still need a nap.
Well, I'm sure, I'm looking forward to, what you have coming down the pipe, or what you're going to do next. I'm sure there's a lot of other people who are as well. And I think a lot of up and coming, people within the industry are going to be, looking to folks like you and other folks within the industry of what, you have planned next. And kind of segueing into my last question is, I think there's a lot of newcomers who are looking to either, get into the healthcare industry, or even just get into, what you're doing from a podcasting standpoint, and, amplifying voices within the industry. So what would be, your top advice to someone who's kind of looking to break into that?
Well, I would say if you're passionate about it, if you really truly care about something, then make it, like, find a way to do it. Don't be scared. There's enough space out there. I mean, don't be afraid that your audience will be, but honestly, I feel like I've been talking to myself this whole time. So like, if you care enough about something to keep doing it, and you would do it anyway, if it wasn't even your business, like make it happen. I would also advise, don't be afraid of failing. Don't be afraid of like trying and knowing that you need to improve. And in that sense, hire an editor. Like, you don't feel like you have to do everything. That's an area that I've definitely had to improve. And the podcast has forced me to stretch, because I'm very independent, very somebody who thinks that like, oh no, if it's gonna get done right, I better do it. But I can't do everything. Have to ask for help, and I've definitely have to add to the team and make it more of a team effort, because there's just no way to do it all on your own. So I don't know. Stretch, have the courage, do it. Don't be scared. Yeah. And if you fail, that's okay. Keep doing it anyway.
Yeah, and that's such good advice too. And I think as women, I think I'm like this. And it sounds like you're like this. I need to do it right. And even from a home perspective, like, no, I'm going to do that because I'm going to get it done right. And it's kind of a control situation.
Sure.
but it is so important to be able to ask for help, and to, you're not failing, and that's not a bad thing. It's just, something that you need to do to get to the next step. And that's
100%. Okay. I think that we need to normalize. Well, I think perfect shouldn't be the enemy of good. If it's not if it's good enough, just get it out, and it matters. If it's important enough to talk about, it doesn't need to be perfectly scripted, or it's okay if you mess up. And I think we need to normalize failing. I think we need to normalize trying and failing and trying again, and having that be okay. That just because you failed at something or you messed it up doesn't mean that you don't get another chance. We're still here, you can keep trying.
Totally. Well, Joy, this has been such a pleasure. Thank you so much for being here and sharing the last, year with us, and, some of your amazing insights, especially within the community, and, what you're doing from, raising those voices of women within the community. We really appreciate it. And I hope you enjoy the rest of your day in Baja.
Thank you. It's a gorgeous day here. But, I love the HITMC community. I don't think that there's any other community like it in health IT, where you just can feel guaranteed that you're going to be surrounded by good, kind people that give good hugs. So
that's the main thing, right?
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much. And thank you to everybody who is listening. This has been Brittany Quemby with HITMC, and thank you for listening. Have a great day.